Welcome to Books for Success. Today we're unraveling the insights from Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat by Samin Nosrat. In this summary, you'll learn why tasting is the key to creating great meals, how timing and salt enhance the flavor, the secret to mouth-watering meals, how heat transforms the texture of your food. Before we begin, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications. Don't be shy to smash that like button if you discover something valuable. Let's grow and succeed together. Let's start, turning any dish into a culinary triumph. Charmed with the pursuit of flavor her entire life, Samin Nosrat has discovered the ultimate secret to creating a perfect meal with or without a recipe: salt, fat, acid, and heat. At first glance, these elements might seem painstakingly simple and obvious. They are. However, Nosrat noticed that nobody used this formula to teach how to cook. She decided to change this. All decisions in the cooking process depend on salt, fat, acid, and heat. These cardinal guides determine the flavor of your food. Salt enhances the taste. Fat amplifies it. Acid is in charge of balancing and brightening. Heat defines the texture of the meal. Having mastered these, you'll create a delicious meal out of any ingredients, even without a recipe. Learning the principles of salt, fat, acid, and heat will grant you more freedom in the kitchen. You won't be afraid to improvise, confidently combine the ingredients you already have, and choose your groceries based on what looks the best, not what the recipe calls for. You will trust your senses and intuition more, changing the recipes and making substitutions. Samin Nosrat has a long relationship with cooking. As a child, she was fascinated with food and what it symbolized. Her love for the art was so strong that she went to Italy for an apprenticeship with an astounding Tuscan chef, Benedetta Vitali. All the while, her conviction in the power of salt, fat, acid, and heat grew, the boiling point of which manifested itself in the unconventional recipe book: a grain, a pinch, or a handful. Though salt gets a bit of a bad rep, it's irreplaceable in cooking. Salt is also essential for the proper functioning of our bodies. It regulates blood pressure and water distribution. Salty food is a common craving, which is great news because our bodies cannot survive without this mineral. In the whole paradigm of meal preparation, salt plays the role of an amplifier. It enhances flavor and unlocks aromatic compounds in food. It doesn't mean the more salt you add, the better the flavor becomes. However, if you get to know your salt and experiment with it to figure out the proper measurements, your meals will never taste bland. What might seem complicated in the pursuit of salt perfection are the many variables that come with it. What kind of salt should you choose? How much should you add? At what time? Luckily, all these questions have answers. There are many types of salt: table, kosher, Malden, fleur de sel, and others. Samin Nosrat acknowledges the benefits of each, but advises using kosher salt for everyday cooking, and a fancy kind like fleur de sel, a type of sea salt, for garnishing. Kosher salt contains no additives and dissolves very quickly. In contrast, sea salt is granulated and adds a pleasant crunch to meals. When it comes to the amount of salt, the key element is tasting. You must sample your meal at each step of the preparation. Salt isn't something you add and then forget about it. If your food tastes flat, sprinkle it with a bit of salt and see how it changes. Don't be terrified of oversalting. There are tricks to fix it: adding more water and balancing the over-seasoned food with more neutral ingredients. Remember, there's no learning without mistakes. Time is vital when it comes to salt. You can't sprinkle your unseasoned pasta or meat with the mineral when it is already served and hope it'll change the flavor. Some food has to be salted in advance, like meat. This way, the seasoning will spread throughout the ingredients and the tissues in the meat will soften, making it more tender. On the other hand, salting seafood too long in advance will result in a dry meal. Fat, delicious, irreplaceable, and vital. Like salt, fat has a somewhat damaged reputation. People firmly believe they must minimize fat intake as much as possible. The affinity doesn't end here. We can't survive without fat, which is essential for nutrient absorption and metabolic functions. Most importantly, it stores energy for future use. Finally, fat is the key to deliciousness. Thanks to its diverse use, fat can play different roles in the cooking process. As the main ingredient, fat substantially influences the meal you're preparing. It gives flavor and texture. Try to imagine a burger without any fat or a pastry dough with no butter. As a cooking medium, the impressiveness of fat cannot be overstated. It has the unique ability to reach extreme temperatures when heated, painting your other ingredients golden brown and granting them divine deliciousness. As a seasoning, it enhances the meal's flavor and perfects its texture. A sprinkle of olive oil turns your bruschetta from satisfactory to sublime. Fat types are much more numerous compared to salt. Olive oil, butter, seed and nut oils, animal fats, you name it, all have different applications and subtypes. When it comes to olive oil, there's no universal type that will suit all dishes. Everyone's taste buds are different, and it isn't easy to distinguish a good flavor of olive oil. What matters here is to know how it shouldn't taste: bitter, greasy, and rotten. Also, try different kinds of oil to determine which one you like the best. Notably, price doesn't equal quality, so you may find sublime olive oil even in your local store for a cheap bargain. So how do you use fat to achieve ultimate deliciousness? The first rule is layering, using more than one type of fat in your meal. For example, add melted butter to the batter to achieve a bouquet of flavor in your waffles. Then, oil your waffle maker with leftover fat from frying morning bacon. Another rule is to balance your fats. If your meal comes out too fat, complement it with more ingredients, or if possible, water it down. If the food is too dry, add some goodness. A bit of olive oil, sour cream, egg yolk, or cheese can improve almost any meal. The secret to mouth-watering deliciousness. The best meals are always described as mouth-watering. That is where acidity comes into play. Your mouth produces the most saliva when eating sour food. It does so to protect your teeth. The primary function of acidity is balancing. On its own, sour food doesn't always bring pleasure. Still, when properly combined with other elements, it produces the delicious flavor we frequently crave. The foundational acid sources are vinegar, citrus, pickles, and dairy. The vinegar for salads is apple, while rice vinegar often appears in many Asian meals. If you crave German red cabbage, use red wine vinegar for the best acidic taste possible. Your tummy will thank you if you add lemon to your hummus. There's no good guacamole without lime. Never use bottled lemon juice. It cannot substitute fresh lemons and will make your meals taste bitter. It's hard to develop a vegetable that can't be pickled, and even more difficult to imagine a food that won't be improved with pickles. Add a couple of pickled carrots to transform a simple steak into a delicious taco. Dairy can become your secret acidic ingredient. Yogurt is an absolute delight if added to a lamb kebab. Travel to Greece by adding red wine and tomatoes to a lamb shoulder. Acid can also make your food more vibrant. Sprinkle your salad with vinegar just before serving, bringing delight to your tongue and your eyes. Your leftover avocado half will retain its fresh greenery if you coat it with lemon juice. Acid changes the texture of the food, making it more firm. That's one of the reasons why you add wine to your caramelized onions only after they've softened. Notably, caramelization also produces acid. Sugar molecules develop into myriads of different compounds, one of which is acid. That's why when caramelized sugar is in an ice cream mixture, its taste is more vibrant than unprocessed sugar. Once again, the best strategy for exploring the cooking abilities of acid is to experiment and taste. Layering also comes into play here. You should consider what acid types you can choose multiple to use and when to add them. The transformative power of heat. No element has as much power over food as heat. It's not as tangible as salt, fat, or acid. You'll have to utilize all your senses when dealing with heat: touch, smell, sound, taste, sight, and of course your common sense. On your journey to understanding the intricacies of cooking, you'll learn how differently food responds to heat and will be able to use this transformative power to the fullest. The essential element to remember here is that the outside and the inside of your cooking must be ready simultaneously. A burnt raw steak is just as sad as mushy, pale-looking roasted potatoes. Water is one of the central elements of all food, and it goes hand in hand with heat. If too much water evaporates from your meal, it can come out dry or crispy. If heated moderately, your food will stay moist and tender. Heat is crucial in regulating the amount of water your ingredients have. When freezing food, remember about dehydration. Under low temperatures, the water contained in the cells of, for example, your steel expands and crystallizes, which makes it more watery and much less delicious. That's why you can't leave food in the freezer for too long. A piece of meat in the freezer for 3 years will not make a good dinner. Like fat, water is medium. It can soften hard vegetables, making them more tender. Gently heated water is the key to good custard. Steam is your guide when it comes to browning food. As long as your onions are steaming, there's still water present, and the caramelization process won't begin until the steam disappears. Contain the steam with a lid if you want your food to be tender and soft. Cooking doesn't begin once you turn on your stove or oven. It starts with the temperature of your ingredients. This element determines how quickly and evenly your food will cook. For example, if you dump a piece of meat out of the freezer straight into the oven, some parts will be stiff when the meal is fully prepared. The same goes for butter and dough. Some recipes, such as pie dough, require cold butter for ultimate crispiness. In contrast, you must melt your butter for other recipes before introducing it to other ingredients. When the hows are clear, it's time to deal with the choice of whats. When choosing what to cook, Samin Nosrat has a favorite strategy called anchoring. It goes like this. You choose one central element of the meal and then build the rest around it. Many things fall under the description of an anchor. one ingredient you have in the fridge, or one particular cooking method you've always wanted to try. Limitations can be anchors too. Time restraints can determine what you're cooking. You won't be cooking a cream soup without a blender, or baking an apple pie without an oven. Sometimes you might crave the cuisine of a particular country. If you want, for example, to eat some Mexican food for dinner, consider the flavors that characterize it and choose your me accordingly. Let your fridge and pantry be your inspiration. Following the golden rules of salt, fat, acid, and heat, even a pack of pasta, a couple of onions and tomatoes can be a delightful dinner. Your cooking journey will benefit if you know everything your fridge and pantry offer. It's much easier to design meals when you know everything you're dealing with. Choose your ingredients carefully. The fresher they are, the more delicious your meal will be. Trust your senses. The tomatoes that don't smell like much will taste about the same. The flavor of wilted greenery is the same as their looks. Notably, Nosrat advises not to disregard frozen fruits and vegetables when no new options are available. If cooked properly, they can also taste amazing. Always remember about layering. Light appetizers should precede heavy and decadent meals. Play with textures to enhance the eating experience. Add breadcrumbs to your soup for some nice crunch. Harmonize your meals with the season. Your ingredients will be fresh and work together beautifully. To avoid overwhelming your palate, heavily season one component of the meal and complement it with more light-hearted elements. Remember about balance. Did you know? Garde-manger is a person at the restaurant who is responsible for inventory management. They look through the entire pantry and refrigerators, documenting everything the restaurant has at its disposal. Conclusion: once you've mastered the essence of salt, fat, acid, and heat, you'll create a culinary delight from any meal. Remember that you won't acquire all intricacies in just one session. Leaning your way around these elements calls for experiments that result in failures and triumphs. Your strongest tool is tasting. Sample what you're cooking and adjust the elements until the flavor becomes just right. Remember the fundamental functions of salt, fat, acid, and heat. Salt enhances the flavor, fat amplifies it, acid heightens it, and heat defines the transformations the meal undergoes. Salt, fat, and acid come in different varieties, each with unique characteristics and influence. Samin Nosrat advises what combinations work best, such as using sea salt for garnishing. However, don't be afraid to get creative and find your recipes. Don't forget about timing. It's essential to all four elements. No amount of salt can fix your pasta if you haven't seasoned the water. If you forget to preheat it in advance, an oven can never bake a successful batch of cookies. Make use of anchoring and layering. Choosing a fundamental element upon which you can build the rest of your meal will make your cooking experience more structured and, consequently, easier. Consider the ingredients you have, the limitations constricting you, your mood, and your cravings. Then consider the combinations you can create, contrasting and complementing your ingredients to design the most divine taste possible. Try this. Think about the meal you love but have never tried to cook on your own before. Attempt to break it down in terms of salt, fat, acid, and heat. What makes its flavor so unique? Be bold and try cooking this meal on your own. Thank you for joining us on this enlightening journey. If you've enjoyed our summary, consider picking up the full book for a more in-depth exploration. Before you go, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't yet, and share this video with someone who could benefit from these insights. Until next time, keep reading, keep learning, and keep growing. Thanks for watching.